Imagine this. You send someone a message. You see those two little words, read. You smile, expecting a reply any second. 5 minutes pass, then 30. A few hours later, you check again. Nothing. By the next day, you're no longer wondering what they're going to say. You're wondering something much worse. Did I do something wrong? Almost everyone has experienced this feeling. Whether it's a friend, a crush, a family member, or even a coworker, being ignored can feel strangely painful. And what's interesting isn't just the silence. It's what your brain does with that silence. Within seconds, your mind starts creating stories. Maybe they're angry. Maybe they hate me. Maybe I said something stupid. Maybe I was too annoying. The strange part is that most of these stories aren't based on facts. They're based on fear. Psychologists have spent years studying why being ignored affects us so deeply. And the answer goes all the way back to one simple idea. Your brain treats social rejection almost like physical pain. Imagine living thousands of years ago. Humans didn't survive alone. Being accepted by your tribe meant food, protection, and survival. Being rejected could literally mean death. Your brain evolved during that time. Even though today you're simply waiting for a text message, your brain still reacts as if something much bigger is happening. That's why your heart beats a little faster, your stomach feels uncomfortable, you can't stop checking your phone, and somehow, every notification, except the one you're waiting for, feels disappointing. Researchers have even found that areas of the brain activated during physical pain can also become active when people experience social rejection. To your brain, silence doesn't feel neutral. It feels like danger. But here's where things become even more interesting. Most people assume they're being ignored because of something they did. In reality, that's often the least likely explanation. Think about your own life. Have you ever opened a message while you were busy, planning to reply later? Maybe you were driving. Maybe you were in class. Maybe you were exhausted after a long day. Then hours passed. The notification disappeared. And before you realized it, 2 days had gone by. It wasn't because you hated the person. You simply forgot. Now imagine the other person. While you completely forgot about the conversation, they spent 2 days convincing themselves that you secretly disliked them. Neither of you was trying to hurt the other, but your brains were telling completely different stories. This is called the uncertainty effect. Human beings dislike uncertainty more than almost anything else. When information is missing, your brain doesn't leave the space empty. It fills it, usually with negative assumptions. It's almost like your brain would rather believe a bad story than have no story at all. That's why ghosting feels so different from hearing, "I'm busy." Even a simple explanation gives your brain closure. Silence doesn't. And without closure, your imagination takes over. But not everyone reacts to ghosting the same way. Some people move on within minutes. Others think about it for weeks. Why? The answer often lies in something psychologists call attachment styles. The way you formed relationships growing up can influence how you react to rejection as an adult. Someone with a secure attachment might think, "They're probably busy." Someone with an anxious attachment may think, "They're leaving me." Same situation. Completely different emotional experience. Your phone hasn't changed. The message hasn't changed. Only the story inside your mind has. Social media makes this even worse. Years ago, if someone didn't respond, you had no idea what they were doing. Today, you can see them posting photos, liking videos, commenting on other people's posts, and sharing stories while your message sits unanswered. Suddenly, it doesn't feel like they forgot. It feels personal, but appearances can be misleading. Many people scroll through social media almost automatically without having the emotional energy to hold conversations. Watching a funny video requires almost no effort. Replying to a difficult message does. Your brain often mistakes activity for availability. Just because someone is online doesn't mean they're mentally available to talk. Another strange psychological effect happens after you've been ghosted. You begin noticing evidence that supports your fear. If they post without replying, your brain says, "See, they ignored me." If they reply to someone else, "See, they don't care." This is called confirmation bias. Once your brain accepts an idea, it starts searching for proof that the idea is true. even if that proof is incomplete, even if another explanation makes more sense. And perhaps the biggest surprise of all, sometimes ghosting has absolutely nothing to do with you. Some people avoid uncomfortable conversations, others struggle with anxiety, some feel guilty for replying late and keep delaying it because they think it's already too late. Ironically, the longer they wait, the harder it becomes to answer, so they continue avoiding the conversation, not because they dislike you, because they're embarrassed. It's a cycle psychologists call avoidance reinforcement. Avoiding the problem gives temporary relief, which makes the brain more likely to avoid it again next time, until silence becomes a habit. Of course, there are times when ghosting is intentional. Sometimes people simply lose interest. Sometimes relationships change. Sometimes people choose distance instead of honesty. It hurts. But even then, spending days searching for hidden meanings rarely changes the outcome. One unanswered message doesn't define your worth. One person's silence doesn't decide your value. The human brain loves certainty. It loves explanations. It wants every story to have a clear ending. But life doesn't always work that way. Sometimes the healthiest answer isn't finding the perfect explanation. It's accepting that you may never receive one. And strangely enough, that's where real freedom begins. The next time someone doesn't reply to your message, notice what happens inside your own mind. Watch how quickly your brain starts writing a story. Then ask yourself one question. Do I actually know this is true? Or is my brain simply trying to fill in the silence? Because more often than not, the loudest conversation isn't happening on your phone. It's happening inside your head. And understanding that may be the most powerful reply you'll ever receive.